part of the consultation process for the Kilkenny City and County Development Plan. I'm John Purcell, as I said, and I work in KCLR, but I've been asked by Kilkenny County Council to act as MC for this event this evening. This is one of a number of events, and of course, in the age of COVID, a word which hopefully we won't use too much throughout the evening, but in this time, we're obviously necessitated to hold this event online. But as with real world events, I suppose the same sort of conventions apply. We have a number of speakers throughout the evening, and then we'll have questions and answers. And with the technology, for any of you who haven't been on this with us before, there is the capacity for you to leave messages if you use the speech bubble icon, which is at the top of your screen. It'll allow you to type in a message which will go to everybody. So throughout the event, you can ask questions, or if you have questions on a particular presentation, and we'll try and get to those throughout the evening, largely in the questions and answer session at the end. Also, there will be the facility for people to make verbal contributions if you like. And that will be at the question and answer session at the end. But in order to indicate to us that you would like to contribute to the meeting, if you would use the raise your hand icon, which is at the top of your screen, just beside the speech bubble. So Naomi Scully from Kilkenny County Council is, for a better word, operating as air traffic controller, and will keep me informed of people who wish to do our best to get around to everybody else. So also, just once the presentation starts, if people could mute their microphones. We'd like, if possible, if people would keep their cameras on, because it tends to, although we're in a quite an artificial setting, being online rather than all being in a hall, in the town hall or wherever, it does make it a bit more real if people can see each other as much as possible. But just put a friendly warning out to people who may be in your household to remain decent in the background and remain clothed at all times, because we don't really want this consultation process to go viral on the internet, which of course that might be a good thing for increasing awareness. You never know. We'll kick off at about 7:10 when people have all arrived in, or when it looks like we get as many as we do. While things have changed at the old Irish convention, have been about 10 minutes late, no matter what the time, still seems to hold forth, and we'll have people joining and leaving throughout the evening. So I'm not sure how many people have joined the meeting at this stage, but we've a healthy attendance. This is the third meeting I think we've held, or no, sorry, the second meeting of which we've held out of a series of 5. This one concerns the economy. Last week we had one on the core strategy last Monday night. On this Thursday coming, the theme of the evening, which will be in a similar format, is climate, renewable energy and transport. And then on this day week, we'll have the last session, which is on natural and built heritage. It's all part of the consultation process been undertaken for the City and County Development Plan, which is going to cover the period 2021 until 2027. And so this is just one phase of the process, and following this phase, which will conclude over the next couple of weeks, the County Chief Executive of the County Council will make a report to the elected members on the consultation process. The plan will be examined and then amended if necessary, and then sent out to consultation once again. So the purpose of this evening is to talk about the whole economic part of the plan, which covers areas such as the growth of the economy, job creation, where stuff fits in on the spatial and economic plans. It all operates in the context of national policy. Also the issue of third level, which has been quite topical of late, and retail. And of course, this is the first of these plans that has ever been framed in terms of COVID and so on. And this has been the most challenging time for businesses, I think, that anybody can ever remember. And so obviously the future plan for the economy of Kilkenny City and County between 2021 and 2027 is of crucial importance. So I don't know if anyone has any questions at this stage. Will be another few minutes before we get things underway. Don't forget you can use the comment button, which is the speech bubble up at the top of your screen, or if you wish to make a verbal input into the meeting, you can raise your hand by pressing the raise hand icon at the top of the screen. So we expect that this event will probably the event will continue. The presentations probably take 30 to 40 minutes, then a questions and answer session. So hopefully we'll be in a position to wrap up by 8:30, 8:45 kind of thing. And just to remind everybody that the meeting is being recorded, and that's all part of this process. But if anybody has reservations about being recorded, perhaps if you send a message or you can talk to anybody from Kilkenny County Council. The questions and the issues raised will all form part of the considerations. They're all being recorded and they will form part of the considerations when the plan is being considered and brought to the next stage. It's 6 minutes past 7 at the moment, and so we're going to wait until I think about 10 past 7 before we get the show underway. He said, bringing a term from his radio background, but the format of the meeting, there'll be a short introduction given by Katrina O'Sullivan, who's the executive planner with Kilkenny County Council, and she'll provide an overview basically of the context in which the development plan is formed and the process and the purpose of the meeting. That will be followed by a presentation lasting about 15 minutes by Dennis Malone, who's senior planner with Kilkenny County Council, and he'll get into the nuts and bolts of the economic development and spatial planning. And finally, Fiona Deegan, who's the head of enterprise in the local enterprise office, will be talking on supporting business in Kilkenny. And I know from my experience, both through the radio station and in presenting a weekly business program here, that the local enterprise board has probably never been busier with businesses over the last year almost. It'll be a year in another 4 weeks. But what's particularly noteworthy is the number of businesses that have had to go online and the huge changes that have taken place as part of all that stuff. So we're coming up to 8 minutes past now. Some people still joining the meeting. Just a reminder, it is being recorded. And if people would just, all contributions, and I just say this as a matter of course, really, not for anything in particular, but just if people treat it as a live meeting and observe all the same conventions, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end or make observations. You could do so either in person by raising your hand and ask to be asked to speak, or else through leaving a question on the comment box. You can type it in at the bottom of the screen. I think I've covered most things now, so we'll be just about ready to get underway. Just reminders of what's coming up on Thursday of this week, the session which you can register for using Eventbrite and use climate as the key word to search for the event, but it's climate change, renewable energy and transport. And then on this day week, natural and built heritage, placemaking and all other issues not covered in the previous sessions will be covered. There's lots of different ways that you can engage with the whole process as well as attending at these meetings through the consult.kilkenny.ie web page or ourplan.kilkenny.ie, or you can send an email at ourplan@kilkennycoco.ie, but there'll be more information given on that at the end and throughout the presentation. So I've rambled on long enough, repeated myself 3 or 4 times, I think, at this stage, but I think most of the early comers who've arrived have joined us at this stage. So we'll get matters underway. And first off, I'd like you to welcome Katrina O'Sullivan, who's Executive Planner with Kilkenny County Council, and she'll give us an overview, an explanation of the context in which the plan has been developed, the whole development plan process, and I suppose the purpose of the meeting. So over to you, Katrina.
Thanks for that, John. I'm just going to share my screen here, so you bear with me. Now, can you all see that? Oh.
Not just yet, Katrina.
Okay, hold on a minute. Sorry about that.
So, yes, I'm seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone see that? Yeah, I think so.
Great. Okay, so thanks for the introduction there, John. So as John outlined, my name is Katrina O'Sullivan. I'm an executive planner in the forward planning section of the council. And tonight I'm going to give a very brief overview on the purpose of tonight's meeting. I'm going to run through an outline of the process for making the development plan. I'm going to do a quick run through on what is a development plan and why does it matter. And finally then how to engage further with the process, as you are already doing by attending here this evening. So I'll just go through that in a bit more detail. So the purpose of this evening's event is to engage with members of the public. So as John has said, there will be plenty of time for discussion at the end of the presentations, and we'll take any questions as you have, either by raising your hand or by entering them into the chat box. We're holding 4 of these online events in total, and the format that's common to them all is that we set the scene by explaining the process and giving a general flavour of the plan, and then we're delving into a series of themes in more detail, and John has gone through those themes, and tonight's theme is economic development, which Dennis and Fiona will give more detail on after my presentation. So in my presentation, my goal is really, in all of this, is just to explain the importance and the scope of the draft development plan. Finally then, another aim is to encourage people to engage further with the process. So if you have comments on any of the topics that are raised here this evening, either by one of the presenters or by one of the contributors in the discussion at the end, we encourage you to make a submission to the process. Excuse me, just to go through then the process and where we're at. There are 3 stages to the making of a development plan. The first being the pre-draft stage, so we've finished that. We've moved on to stage 2, which is the draft stage. And then finally then stage 3, amendments to the draft. So the red highlighted area there is where we're at presently, which is the public consultation stage on the draft plan. The draft plan is out on public display, and we are now seeking submissions to the process. And that phase continues until the 12th of March. So the important thing to bear in mind is that every single submission that we receive to the draft plan must be responded to. It must be, the issues raised must be summarised, and then the chief executive will give her opinion on the issues raised. the Chief Executive's report, all of that information goes into the Chief Executive's report, which is then brought into the Council chamber for consideration by the county councillors. And then it is likely that arising as a result of those submissions, a number of changes will be made to the, or proposed to the draft. Those changes are known as material amendments. And then we move on to stage 3, which is public consultation on any amendments that are put forward. Again, we will seek submissions. Each of those submissions is summarised and the Chief Executive gives her opinion on each of those submissions. We compile those into a report. Again, it goes back into the chamber for final adoption by the members. So the key takeaway just from this slide is that if you make a submission to the process, it will be documented through the process and we must respond to any of the issues that you raise in detail. So very briefly, a development plan, what is it? It's, you all probably know, it's in basic terms, it's the big overall spatial plan for the city and county. It's made every 6 years. It covers the period 2021 to 2027, and it sets a framework for future physical development. And I got a line from the Office of the Planning Regulator, who have they've just compiled a series of leaflets on planning, and I liked this line. The development plan will shape our community in numerous ways. It is important to recognise that the content of the development plan is one of the best ways both individuals and communities can engage with and influence the planning process that will shape our surroundings. So I suppose you can't put it any clearer than that, really. So that's what a development plan is. Now moving on to what's contained within our draft Kilkenny City and County Development Plan. So the plan is published as 2 volumes. Volume 1 covering the entire county. Volume 2 then has specific city-related policies and objectives. There are also 13 appendices plus 2 main environmental reports, the Strategic Environmental Assessment and the Natura Impact Report. And some of those appendices range from the wind energy strategy, which will be discussed at the next webinar on Thursday, the retail strategy, which Dennis actually will go into more detail in his presentation. So a development plan, of course, is not made in a policy vacuum. Now, apologies for the quality of some of this slide. I took this from the National Planning Framework. The development plan must take account of the wider national and regional planning and infrastructure investment policies. So this slide just illustrates the hierarchy of plans in an Irish context and how the development plan is influenced by numerous other plans and legislation. So on the left-hand side there is EU, national legislation and policy framework. So that covers things from the Planning and Development Act to the guidelines as published by ministers. The middle bit there shows the plan hierarchy in Ireland, which is national planning framework at the top. Then we have the regional tier, which is regional, spatial and economic strategies, and then moving down to the local, which is the development plan. And then on the right-hand side, we have the various other plans and strategies, such as the local economic and community plans that feed into the making of the development plan. So within this overall policy framework then, the council can devise its own policies for the county. So, of course, I can't run through all the content of the plan, but just to give a flavour of what's contained within it. Climate change is now front and centre as a theme in this draft plan, and climate change forms chapter 2 of the plan. Other themes include how to make rural communities stronger, and in this regard there's an objective for a programme for new housing in small towns and villages in conjunction with infrastructural agencies such as Irish Water. Jobs and economic development, also that forms the main theme for tonight's meeting. So I'll let Dennis and Fiona speak to that in more detail, but that's set out in the economic development chapters, which are contained in both volume 1 and volume 2. And finally then, heritage forms another mainstay of the plan with a chapter again in both volumes. And heritage is the theme for the webinar on next Monday, the 8th of February. I've touched there on the main themes, but just to give an overview of the plan structure and content, the 2 volumes made up of chapters and maps, of course. Within each chapter, there's policies, objectives, and development management standards. And just to break those out, policies are a statement of the Council's intent, and they make up the bulk of the plan text. Objectives are picked out. These are specific, attainable deliverables that the Council are now committed to if they make their way into the adopted plan. So, for example, in the context of economic development, we have an objective 5I to secure the development of a third and or fourth level campus in Kilkenny as part of the development of a technological university for the South East. And the third one there, development management standards, those are the standards that every planning application must adhere to. And in the context of economic development, they include specific standards in relation to items like car parking provision and bicycle parking standards to be provided with any planning application. So that's a whistle-stop tour of a development plan. Just to reiterate, as John set out, the schedule of the webinars. Tonight is the second in a series of 4. We did one last week on the core strategy. Tonight's is economic development. The next one coming up is this Thursday on climate change, renewable energy and transport. And finally then on the 8th of February is built and natural heritage and placemaking. And you can still sign up for either one or both of those next events. And this is my last slide here, just to say again, we encourage everyone to make a submission to the process. If you have any comments on anything arising out of tonight's discussion, there are 3 ways to make a submission. The first is on consult.kilkenny.ie. That's the Council's consultative portal. That's where any document or plan that the Council are making is on public display for comment and submissions. So you go on there, you register for an account, it's very straightforward, and you can make your submission directly onto that. And the main benefit of that is then we can keep you up to date, because once you're registered, we can let you know if there's another consultation that you may well be interested in making another submission on. So I do encourage everyone to register with consult.kilkenny.ie. The second option then to make a submission is to email in to ourplan@kilkennycoco.ie. And finally, then you can always just post it in to that address there, and that address is available on our website. So we very much look forward to receiving all those submissions over the coming weeks. So thank you for your time. I'll hand you back there to John.
Thanks very much, Katrina. That was very informative, and you took us through that very well. Thank you very much. That was Katrina O'Sullivan, Executive Planner with Kilkenny County Council there, giving us the structure of the process, how it goes, the context in which all this plan operates, which is within national policy, regional policy, and this is the local policy. The process, we're about roughly 50% through the process. We're moving into stage 2, I think, of the second part of a 3-part process, and also just the different subject areas that are being covered. So now we're going to get a bit more into it. And Dennis Malone, who's Senior Planner with Kilkenny County Council, is going to talk about the economic development and the spatial planning and the nuts and bolts of the actual plan. So over to Dennis.
Thanks, John. Now I just want to share my screen with everyone. So can everyone see that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, that's great. So that's just thanks to Katrina for that introduction. And as Katrina said, I'll be taking you through some of the more refined details in the development plan itself. So like as Katrina pointed out in her presentation there, we don't form these policies and objectives in a vacuum. So in all things, we have national economic policy in terms of economy to deal with. So in terms of job creation, IDA would be attracting foreign direct investments, FDI. Enterprise Ireland generally looks after a larger indigenous enterprise. And then at a local level, we have the local enterprise office, which that's our first stop shop for starting or expanding small businesses. And KCC then is that office, enterprise support through local enterprise office, the LEO, as we refer to. And Kilkenny County Council then also sets the land use and economic policy that underpins the council's development. So it has an important role in terms of the economic development of the county. The council itself then is also a major economic contributor. So the budget just passed for 2021 is a budget of 90 million on a day-to-day spend, and there's also the capital programme behind that, which deals with infrastructural development within the county. So the various physical infrastructure that goes on in the county will be covered in the capital projects, such as the Abbey Quarter, roads, and then on top of that, on a day-to-day basis, we deliver a large range of services within the county, which has its own economic, in itself, it's an economic driver, but it supports some other services that we avail of. So the council also supports, as I said, through employment through the LEO, and the LEO promotes entrepreneurship, and it fosters business startups. It develops existing micro and small businesses to drive job creation, and it provides accessible, high quality supports for business ideas. So in terms of integrating all that then into a spatial and economic plan, there's the county development plan itself, but side by side with that is the local economic community plan, and Fiona will talk a little bit about that more, and that identifies objectives and actions for economic and community development of the county, and as I said, it promotes employment and supports enterprises through the local government system. But it must be consistent with the development plan, and the current local economic community plan runs from 2015 to 2021. So I think the thing to focus on there is that the local economic and community plan must be consistent with the spatial planning of the development plan. And just to give you an indication on that, you'll see here on the left we have a core strategy map, which is basically the county on the left, and you see the two red dots, that's Kilkenny City and Ferrybank or Waterford area and Bellevue. So they will be two strategic economic locations for job creation within the county. So what I mean by that is, you know, if someone said, well, we'll have, you know, the north end of the county will become a strategic location, that's not really possible in the sense of following the core strategy. And in the city, then you also have the city core strategy. So the graphic there, you'll see the light pink areas are.
Dennis, could
Yes?
I just interrupt? I think there's something has gone amiss with the presentation. We can't see the slides there anymore. So
Okay,
perhaps if you just have a look there, this is there's an icon that says screen broadcasts everything on your screen. I'm not too sure.
Well, just let me go back and.
Naomi, is that to do with the recording? Who's recording?
Yeah, I'm okay anyway on this end.
Okay.
Not showing up on my screen.
Let me read.
Yeah.
Is that back again?
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I said, just come back to give an indication of how the spatial element works. We have a core strategy which identifies a strategic spatial locations for employment and population. And on the left of the screen there, you'll see the county map, which is a general county map with the two red dots show Kilkenny City and Ferrybank / Bellevue, which would be two strategic locations for employment. And then just to delve a little bit into the city, you'll see there on the right hand side of the screen is this footprint of the city with the slight pink areas being the high employment areas such as Purcell's Inch, Hebron Road, Freshwood Road and Lochby. So in some of the detail then, Chapter 5 of the plan actually covers the provisions for economic development, and the economic strategy set out covers these key factors for job growth. So again, just recognising obviously Kilkenny is you know, a very rural based economy, so we have agriculture and food, but we also have strong performances in financial services, technology, manufacturing, creative industries. Tourism and hospitality is a significant contributor, and as Katrina alluded to again, third and fourth level education is an area that we want to see development in and expansion of. And then the strategic locations would be the business and technology parks. Again, as I mentioned, Kilkenny City has a number of these. The Abbey Quarter within the city and the Bellevue Port area would be key strategic locations for economic development. And just to break that down a little bit further, you'll find within the section then that agriculture, and again, supporting agriculture and food development while maintaining the environment. financial services and technology, the means of supporting that is suitably serviced employment locations in the city and county. So when I say suitably serviced, not just for water and sewerage and roads and so on, but also increasingly, of course, broadband and technology, tech communications and so on. Then manufacturing would be ample quantities of zoned service land available in city and county. So particularly, around the city and also at Bellevue Port. So the evidence of that would be in recent years the development of the cheese manufacturing plant by Glanbia in Bellevue Port over the last couple of years will be an example of that. And then you have the creative industries, tourism and services, including retail. So it's trying to promote and develop high quality tourism, leisure and complementary activities for the city and county, such as examples, Discovery Park in Castlecombe, you have Woodstock outside of Inistioge, the Medieval Mile, the festivals in the city and county, Butler Gallery and so on. And then the retail strategy, which is an important sector in itself as a service industry. And in the last lineup then was third level education. So again, as just referring to what Katrina said, we have a specific objective in the plan to secure the development of a third and our fourth level campus in Kilkenny as part of the development of the technological university for the Southeast. And the case has been well made there for that, going back to 2018 when Kilkenny launched its publication From Charter to Framework, the case for higher education provision in Kilkenny. And that was April 2018, and that has been a long-standing ambition of the council. Now, just to deal a little bit with retail. So we have a retail strategy, and that is one of the appendices of the city and county plan, and it goes into some detail in that about the research that was carried out and so on. But again, the retail strategy needs to be aligned to our core strategy, with Kilkenny City being the main focus for retail development. We have an ambition for a district centre in Ferrybank, and then we have underneath that we then have our district towns, and under that level then we have the smaller towns and villages. So we're promoting a town centre first policy. And what does that mean? Well, in Kilkenny City, for instance, you work from the centre out in terms of any proposed major retail development. And we have our core retail area, and that's the first choice. So it must be shown that every site within the core retail area is exhausted before you move outside of that core retail area. And again, any proposals around retailing must align with the other policies in the plan, such as heritage, traffic, environmental issues, and so on. Now, retail challenges then. Obviously, the impact of COVID-19 has been huge. And you'll see there the top picture is a photograph I took at High Street at 10:20 a.m. on March 21st last year, 2020. That was just at the start of the lockdown. So you can see absolutely nobody on the street. So that has continued, and it's been able to position Kilkenny to rebound after COVID-19. It will be an important issue going forward, and Fiona will deal a little bit with that too. And then the other huge impact, and this has been accelerated by COVID, is the impact of online retailing. And the businesses trying to market their premises as online trading is also a challenge going forward. Just moving on to placemaking as one of the answers to that challenge. So in order to, as the economy rebounds and the city and the county rebounds, the idea of placemaking and making the city and the town centres more attractive is becoming more and more to the fore. And placemaking is a multifaceted approach to improving and creating quality place. And it's it's an interaction between people and the places they inhabit, achieving a high quality of life within those spaces, creating a sense of place and a belonging, and an important element of attracting investment. And this would be a message be brought forward through agencies such as the IDA, which will be placing a lot of emphasis on the placemaking within towns and cities. And you just see there some of the actions taken by KCC since the COVID-19 was brought in. So we have two photographs there at the market yard, where car parking spaces were replaced by the seating and tables. And this has become a successful addition to the city centre. The other thing that has been important is the town centre improvements. Again, making town centres more attractive, more accessible to people by walking, cycling, and making places more places to relax, rest within the public realm. So examples of that in the city would be the Market Yard, as outlined in the photographs there, the Linear Park, which will come on stream later this year, the Mayor's Walk along by the castles, which has added tables and chairs and has been a welcome addition to that, and the medieval mile along and the River Nore Park, and also the Butler Gallery in the space that has been created, the public space has been created around the Butler Gallery, and not to forget the county places like Callan, the Moat Park, Abbey Meadows, Knocktofford, Ballyhale, new footpath, Ballyragged footpaths and car parking, Graignamanagh, Solaire Wood and footpaths upgrade, and Ferrybank new playground open. So all these contribute to the place making, the quality of space, and enjoying the spaces for people to make them more attractive. And with that then goes obviously the benefit of retailers and businesses being able to take advantage of that extra footfall. Again, just some examples, the Abbey Meadows there on the left in Callan, the Moat Field in Callan also on the right, so upgrades of the 850 metre walking trail in the Moat Lane, and the Butler Gallery, 2 photographs there of how it looks from behind the library, and a picture of the space behind the gallery, which now forms part of the cafeteria. So with that, that's a quick overview of the development plan and how it relates, how the physical development relates to the economic development, and what strategies we have in place to promote the economic development in a physical sense. So thank you, and I'll hand you back to John there.
Thanks very much, Dennis. And I must say, having spent the last month almost in lockdown, it's lovely to see those spaces and look forward to having a cup of coffee sitting out in the Market Yard or rambling down by Graignamanagh. It'll be a while yet, but we have to keep our eyes on the prize. And some good news, I'm not too sure whether everybody knows, but Cartoon Saloon have once again been longlisted for the Oscars, which is the first step towards being nominated for an Oscar. So that's very good news. And so the film Moonwalkers features Kilkenny very much. So that's really something to look forward to in the coming weeks and months ahead. There's an observation or two have come in, but we'll keep those for the questions and answer session at the end. Just a reminder, you can actually submit a question or an observation using the chat feature at the top of the screen. Somebody's got either a bad infestation of bees or a printer or something going on. But as I was saying, you can use the speech bubble icon. You can put a question in at the side, and we'll get to it after our next presentation, which is about to be given to us by Fiona Deegan, who's head of enterprise with Kilkenny Local Enterprise Office, who you would have heard Dennis refer to, and who've been on the front line of dealing with so many businesses over the last months and almost a year, because small and medium enterprises are, despite what the focus goes on large multinational, small and medium-sized enterprises who are looked after by the local enterprise office, are the backbone of business. But not only that, Kilkenny local authorities and Kilkenny County Council also work with large and multinational businesses. Interesting to see in the last couple of weeks, I was speaking to Brendan MacDonald, and like everyone else, the IDA has now largely gone online too, and they are actually giving virtual tours and itineraries to people using Zoom and Teams, and WebEx and all those other technologies. So without further ado, I'll now hand you over to Fiona Deegan, Head of Enterprise with the Kilkenny Local Enterprise Office. Over to you, Fiona.
Thanks, John, and thanks for inviting me this evening just to talk about how our work in the Local Enterprise Office aligns with the development plan. And I suppose just in relation to the micro and small and medium enterprise sector, we work very closely to support startups and existing businesses through a range of interventions, through the local enterprise office. And over the last year, we've been extremely busy in terms of our trading online voucher and getting people to work online. That's only a small part of the work that we do through the Economic Development Unit of the Council. And this work is informed by the local economic and community plan, which Dennis and Katrina mentioned there earlier. And this plan is an integrated statutory plan, which is reviewed and adopted by the Council every 6 years. And the development plan informs the content of the LECP, and therefore both plans are very much interdependent in setting out the strategic vision for the economic growth of the county. And I suppose the overarching theme of the economic dimension of the local economic and community plan is job creation, and to foster a high employment economy supported by 9 high-level goals. And those goals would range from, I won't go through the 9 of them, but would range from supporting the enterprise economy, developing a rural economy, contributing to regional growth and international potential. So the LECP itself provides for a suite of 63 economic actions that will lead to the achievement of those high-level goals. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on those actions here tonight, but I am going to give you an overall view of how our work supports the high-level actions, from strengthening the local enterprise base to contributing to the growth of the county and expanding the international reach. And I suppose just to note that a new LECP for 2021 to 2027 is an objective of the City and County Development Plan. So on the screen there, you will see what Dennis referred to earlier as placemaking. And you'll see a number of the principles there. And Dennis mentioned that the IDA put a huge importance on this. And the IDA Regional Recovery and Sustainable Growth Strategy up to 2024 notes that local authorities have an important role to play in placemaking, which is critical to attracting foreign direct investment. And the IDA state that their ability to continue to win that investment, even online at the moment, is dependent on local authorities consistently improving the livability of key towns. Therefore, the role of placemaking in helping to enhance Kilkenny's attractiveness to inward investment is crucial. The creation of attractive places to live and work is good planning, but it's also good enterprise policy. And it will provide us with a competitive edge when it comes to attracting and retaining the skills and talent on which inward investment is reliant. So as well as being a great place to do business, it's in our interest also to be known as a great place to live. So you will see from some of the principles, feeling safe, our space is safe and well maintained to foster the community, and connectivity. Is the centre well served by public transport and linked to the region? And working and living, and really important, is there housing choice? Is there employment? Is there educational resources? So they're all the pieces of work that we would be working on through the Economic Development Unit. And I suppose those principles inform the work of the local authority in making Kilkenny a great place to live, to work and to play. And in order to support those place-based making principles and to sell Kilkenny as a destination, not only for investment, but also as a destination to visit, to shop, to eat, etc. Kilkenny County Council have recently developed the county destination brand, which is kilkenny.ie, in conjunction with actually the City Centre Task Force, with the tagline, and you'll see it there, the best of Ireland, inviting local and national and international communities to come see, to come do, to come invest and to come shop. And this brand was launched back during COVID in 2020 in October. So we're currently working on the short and long-term strategy direction of that brand. And I just ask you, if you want to have a look at that, to visit kilkenny.ie or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So the overarching brand itself encompasses five key areas: investment, tourism, food, shopping, craft and design. So tonight I'm just going to focus on the invest piece for the next slide. So the Invest Kilkenny brand is the brand through which we sell Kilkenny to attract local, national and international business to Kilkenny. And we work closely with the IDA and Enterprise Ireland, and we sell Kilkenny under 5 key pillars, and you'll see them listed there: connectivity, first choice for success, property solutions, the high caliber talent, and a great place to live. And the Invest message itself really sells Kilkenny as a unique commercial location in the heart of Ireland with the capacity to attract high caliber talent, being a vibrant place to live and work and steeped in history and rich in culture, and a place where people can come not only to make a living, but also to make a life. So in terms of connectivity, when we're speaking with businesses that the IDA and Enterprise Ireland are introducing to us, and we're able to sell Kilkenny and state that we're the closest city to Dublin, 90 minutes from the airport. We're connected with 7 daily train commuter services and 9 daily express bus services. We're a gateway to Ireland's 4 other cities, Waterford, Cork, Limerick and Galway, thanks to our quality infrastructure and road and rail. And we also have access to 2 seaports with direct links to the UK and Europe, including Rosslare Europort and the home to Ireland's closest multimodal port to Europe at Bellevue. So these are all really, really important when we're talking to businesses looking to locate here in Kilkenny. And I suppose we're very lucky. We're the first choice for success for a range of businesses, and this is just a few of the businesses that have decided to locate here in Kilkenny, and really big names there and really fantastic companies. And we were their first choice for success. And we can state that a number of successful international businesses and startup enterprises have located here. More recently, I suppose UPMC and AB Agri and Security Risk, with businesses locating here internationally, but also businesses like the Cairn Group, who have their headquarters in Dublin, opening offices here in Kilkenny. And really, I suppose if you look at those names on the screen, you'll see that our key sectors are in the financial services, agri-food, technology, creative and manufacturing sectors. And we've already attracted significant investment from leading financial services companies such as State Street International and the Cairn Group and Bank of Ireland. And these companies would state that they were attracted by a location offering exceptional global connectivity and the capacity to attract that high caliber talent that I mentioned. Kilkenny is also a location for the innovative tech companies who want to benefit from exceptional offering of high quality talent, investment opportunities and the infrastructure. I suppose the tech sector itself is a core part of the government's economic agenda, and its support is not limited to those companies operating in the capital. Kilkenny is home to global tech organisations and startups involved in the cybersecurity and data analytics and digital technology space, businesses such as Security Risk Advisors and Cybertechs. And I suppose we also have a long established agri-food sector with major companies operating outside of the county, such as Glanbia and Connolly's Red Mills. And I suppose this is supported by an emerging artisan producer base of approximately 40 micro and medium-sized food sectors. And just to move on then to the design and crafts space, we're home to the Design and Crafts Council, headquarters and Grenna Mill Craft School. We're long recognised as the centre of Ireland's design and craft sector, with international lifestyle brand Kilkenny Design having established itself right in the heart of the city over 50 years ago. And Kilkenny's flourishing creative scene has led to some world-leading creative companies such as Cartoon Saloon, as John mentioned, the company behind Wolfwalkers, and also they were previously nominated for the Song of the Sea, the book The Secret of Kells and The Breadwinners. So, really, really exciting companies we have here. And the fact that we have those companies here, it entices other companies. When they see those companies have located here, it's really good for us to be able to say, look, they've based themselves here and people consider looking at Kilkenny. I suppose the next thing that the IDA look at and Enterprise Ireland when they're looking to locate businesses is where are they actually going to locate. I suppose, as Dennis mentioned there earlier, we have an array of commercial ready property solutions available for a variety of businesses and their operations. We have commercial ready service land enough, as Dennis said, throughout the city and county. A perfect choice for corporate headquarters, office developments, craft and creative industry, manufacturing operations, and agri-food companies. We have an outstanding mixed-use development site with significant business opportunity in the heart of Kilkenny City at the Abbey Quarter. And you'll see some images there of the screen of the work of the building as it stands on the bottom there today, and the final images of what the brew house building will look like. So the first of the buildings on the site being developed is actually the brew house, and that will deliver modern office space, and the surrounding public realm is currently being developed there. I suppose it was originally due to be complete in December 2020, but due to COVID, the site was closed for 8 weeks in 2020. And I suppose the impact of this, together with COVID-related supply chains and other operational issues, pushed the completion out to April. But based on the current lockdown, expectations are that this is likely to push the completion out to June or July 2021. I suppose outside of that, the project is progressing as well as could be expected, and there is good interest in the building on the Abbey Quarter, and the Abbey Quarter partnership are currently at an advanced stage on lettings on a number of units within the building. So that's positive and a really strategic location for Kilkenny. Other strategic location that we continuously discuss with investors is Bellevue Port. And that offers a development-ready strategic industrial investment zone there in Bellevue, with existing water and wastewater, gas and power infrastructure, seaport access and direct access to the national motorway system. And as you can see, it's strategically placed within 2 hours of Ireland's major city, and it has considerable experience handling all types of cargo, but also in Marine Point Business Park, which is also part of Bellevue Port, offers modern office accommodation. So they're the strategic locations that we can sell. The other items that we sell Kilkenny on is our high caliber talent, and really this is hugely important from an investor point of view. So they're looking at where they can access their talent from when they come to Kilkenny. And really, we have access to a young and flexible, highly skilled talent pool with a population of approximately 498,000 within a 60-kilometre radius, and one of the fastest growing populations in the country. We have 2 third-level facilities within 30 minutes, producing 3,500 graduates per year from Waterford IT and IT Carlow. And, you know, it's an attractive location for people and their families to come to live and work here in Kilkenny. So, I mean, 60% of our graduates actually leave the Southeast annually to study outside of the county, and only 40% of them return. So really the importance of the campus in Kilkenny as part of the Technological University of the Southeast really is an imperative for us going forward. So in terms of the final strand that we sell Kilkenny on, and that's, we sell it on a great place to live. And, you know, it's easy to sell Kilkenny as a great place to live, but there's a lot of work goes in behind that. And really, we set standards. We have a vibrant cultural and sporting lifestyle. I suppose that's hard to find anywhere else. And we like to set the standards. And as you can see from the screen there, the many awards that we've won over the last 2 to 3 years, with the most recent award being the Irish Business Against Litter Award, which we have won for 5th year in a row. And they're all important factors that investors consider as well when they're looking to locate a business. You know, we have a thriving food culture. We've an abundance of gourmet eateries, including Michelin star restaurants. And although all these are actually closed at the moment, you know, this is temporary, and, you know, we will continue to sell Kilkenny based on these. We're a city of festival. We're world renowned for our festivals such as the Kilkenny Arts Festival, the Cat Flats, and Kilkenomics. And I suppose, you know, really the next thing that I would look at, and the main things that businesses ask when they're coming to Kilkenny, is where are our employees going to live? So Kilkenny County Council, when businesses, when they're considering to set up a location, really, that's the question that they would ask in relation to housing. And one such investment is the Brega Valley. And Shea Construction were appointed, and construction commenced in March 2019 with works currently advancing. And the infrastructure being provided includes roads, services and amenity areas. And this has all facilitated the development of what you see there on the screen. There's currently 49 houses under construction. There's planning granted for another 110. There's a strategic housing development application gone to An Bord Pleanála for a further 110 houses, and a strategic housing development at pre-planning stage for 210 houses. So the council will continue to work with stakeholders to deliver on housing for employees who come to work in businesses in Kilkenny. And I suppose the final piece of the jigsaw in terms of what investors are looking for when they're coming to Kilkenny, and what employees are looking for in terms of locating here is education, and where will our children go to school. So there's significant investment in currently in Kilkenny in education. We have 79 schools, including national schools, special schools and private schools. We're fortunate to have a great range of private and secondary schools throughout the county. And currently you'll see that the CBS Secondary School, there's a new school for 1,000 pupils off the Dunningstown Road planned. Presentation Secondary School, a new school on the existing site for 1,000 pupils. 2 new secondary schools in the Brega Valley on a school campus site. And St. Canice's Primary School on Granges Road, a new school on the existing site, and plans for an extension on the existing site to St. Kieran's College, and a new site has been acquired for the new primary school on the Brega Valley. So a huge amount of work happening in Kilkenny in terms of education. And I suppose I've outlined a range of pillars there that we would be discussing with the IDA and Enterprise Ireland in terms of inward investment and getting businesses to set up here in Kilkenny. And I suppose progression and work on these 5 pillars ensure that we can be at the top of the class in competing for inward investment, in order to ensure that we can provide a great location for employers and employees to live and work and play. So that's it, John. A lot there. Could stay talking for the night, but that's it.
Thanks very much, Fiona. And that was a real whistle-stop tour of all that's going on. And I think I winced, I have to admit, I winced when I heard you talk about wolf walkers, because I, of course, deliberate mistake, called it moonwalkers earlier on. I had been obviously thinking about Michael Jackson going through Thomastown when he was alive. One of the more interesting phone calls we got from a listener to KCLR over the years was, I saw Michael Jackson going through Thomastown. So obviously he was on my mind. So apologies to Cartoon Saloon. Folks, thank you very much to our presenters, to Katrina, to Dennis and to Fiona there. We're going to have a question and answer session now where people are welcome to make observations or ask questions or seek clarification on anything they heard. You can do that in one of 2 ways. You can raise your hand and ask to be asked for the floor, so to speak, or you can just type your question in at the side using the chat icon or the speech bubble icon. So if you remain muted for the moment, but if you want to talk, obviously you can unmute yourself. There's a question in early on in the evening, Dennis, directed at you, and it's from Lorcan, and he asked, what criteria was used to determine phase 1 and phase 2 retail developments? Perhaps you could give us a bit of detail on that.
Thanks, John. Yeah, no, I'll answer that question. All right. So in terms of retailing, as I mentioned in the presentation, there's a focus on town centre first. So in looking at the amount of zoned land that we had, say, for general development, which would include retailing, we had the existing city centre areas, which is High Street, John Street, Rosin Street, that area, plus the McDonald's Junction area, plus then the Mart site. So they're the 3 areas that you would have been looking at. And the phasing referred to revolves around those 3 areas. So in terms of town centre first, we have our core retail area, which is made up of High Street, Rosine Street, Kieran Street. So that's the central core area. And you'd have the fringe areas of John Street, Patrick Street, which leaks out into the area. And then the last expansion of the city centre activity was made in McDonagh Junction, and that delivers an expanded retail offer plus offices and apartments and so on. So that's the town centre mix. So in looking at where you'd move to the next phase is on just adjacent to High Street, Parliament Street, we have the Abbey Quarter, which is another mixed use development, which has just started. So we have office, retail, housing is to go in there. And then you still have some capacity in McDonagh Junction. And then obviously the old Mart site has a lot more capacity too. We've had the development of the cinema there, but there's still a lot of capacity left in that for development. So in looking at the scale of the city, the current trading activity, so if you look at the vacancies rate that had developed in the city over the last 5 to 6 years during the recession, while it's not excessive in national terms, it was still high. So up in the teens, the low teens, about 15%, I think is the figure. So all that's identified within the core the retail strategy. So in looking at where you might expand then in a sequential approach, you'd start from the core and work outwards. So the phase one is in McDonagh Junction and the Abbey Quarter, and then the phase two would be further out. So if you're coming in with, say, a proposal to develop on the phase two lands, you must be able to show that all other options have been identified and are not, either workable, the sites aren't available, or whatever. So that's the idea behind the phasing, that you work in a sequential system out from the centre out, and it's trying to protect. You're not trying to protect individual businesses, but you're trying to protect the vitality and the vibrancy of the city centre by having that, restriction in the how the development is evolved over time. So I don't know whether that explains it, but that's a shot at it anyway.
Okay, Lorcan, I don't know if you're still on the line, if you'd like to say anything. Oh, Lorcan has put in, is the Mart not closer to the town centre than McDonagh? Dennis, would you address that?
Yeah, I'd say they're probably similar in terms of I remember going back before McDonagh Junction was developed, and there was competition, I suppose, between whether McDonagh Junction or the Mart site would be the chosen site for future development. And at that time, they're very similar in terms of direct connection. So what you have then is you have an established town centre expansion in McDonagh Junction. And as I said, there is still capacity in there. So working sequentially, you'd still go to the next nearest, or the next available. So you wouldn't, in preference to going to a greenfield site or a brownfield site, which has no, very little there at the moment, you would try to reinforce your existing pattern of development before you move to another new retailing site.
Okay, Lorcan, yeah, thanks, Dennis. That answers his question, Lorcan said. So thanks very much for that. Michael O'Brien has raised his hand. If you'd like to put your question, Michael. If you unmute your microphone, perhaps that might be the thing.
That would.
Hello. Hello, Michael.
Yeah, you got me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's over to you. Hello. Look, we might come back to Michael. Reminds me of doing a radio program when you lose the person on the line. Anyone else like to ask a question? If you'd like to raise your hand. Sorry, no, there's one. If last week it was, this comes in from Carmel Cummins, and it says last week it was mentioned that the Roar Ennistig area was going to be used as an exemplar for rural development. What might that mean for the area in practice in terms of economic development. I don't know who'd like to take that. Would that be
I think
Dennis?
yeah, I think I was the one that mentioned that last week. So in terms of the roaring Inistí, certainly that came up in the context of rural housing and development of the smaller towns and villages. So I did say that we were going to produce a guidance shortly into the lifetime of the current next plan, which will deal with the development of clusters or small rural clusters in nodes and settlements within the county, and that we would be using the roaring Inistí as an exemplar in that. So we will take as an example of how to do it. We will look at the roar and use that as an example. So it wasn't directly related to economic development, but obviously if you're trying to bring people in to live in a place like the roar Inistí, it'll obviously support economic activity by having people living in the locality and supporting the services that are there, social services and whatever shops or pubs might be around the place. So that's what was meant by using the roar as an exemplar.
Okay, Carmel, I hope that answered your question. Anyone else like to make an observation in relation to that? Marion Ackerman asks, are we still at nearly full convenience floor space capacity for Kilkenny in the life of this plan? And that's directed at you, Dennis.
Yeah, thanks, Marion. Well, one of the things that we did in this plan was we deliberately didn't do a capacity assessment around the county or for the county. So we felt in previous years we had, but in looking at reviewing it, it was actually, we felt it was actually a misguidance in a way, because obviously people that come to shop in Kilkenny don't just come from within the county, come from outside or out with the county. So rather than trying to give an expectation around what's the capacity of the county, that's something that we went away from that argument, and we went to a situation where, if you get a proposed development, you need to be able to, the proposer would need to be able to justify the capacity of the catchment area. So these were based more on catchment areas than on county boundaries. So that's why we didn't. So to answer your question, I don't have a figure for the capacity of the county, because that depends to a large extent on the type and scale of development proposed. So if you're coming with a development greater than 2,000 square meters into the city in terms of comparison shopping, so that's like things like furniture and all that, or if you're 1,000 square meters in terms of convenience, which is your Dunnes Stores and Lidl and all those, you'd have to justify the scale of the development through a retail impact assessment. So that's where that would come from. So to talk about capacity isn't necessarily the right way to approach it. So to be to be silly about it for a minute, you could say, well, if I put something like the Dundrum town centre in the middle of Kilkenny, well, what's the capacity of that? You're talking about a scale of development that would attract regional stuff. So there isn't a magic figure of retail convenience floor space that you can say that's the capacity for the city, because people will come to the city for all sorts of reasons and will use the floor space. So it's based on catchment areas rather than county areas.
Marion, I don't know if that answers your question. Would you like to make an observation or anything? No? No.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I suppose my other question is the regional retail strategy that was an objective in the life of the last plan hasn't been done, and is there a plan to do that in light of the developments in Waterford in the life of this plan?
Yeah, we're still signed up to making that happen. All right, Marion, and I suppose that was taken, if you look back at the regional spatial economic strategy that I talked about last week, it's an objective in that should be done. Now, at the moment, Waterford City and County are at a much earlier stage than we are within our own process of doing our city and county development plan. So to me, that's the ideal time to trigger that. Now, the regional authority or the regional assembly are the ones patrolling that. So they've mandated that joint retail strategy should be done within 12 months. So we're well into that 12 months now, and it hasn't started yet to my mind, but it's something that needs to be accelerated on, because obviously something like Waterford, which has a regional impact, and with their North Keys development, that has a potential to impact on a regional basis, either to Kilkenny, Wexford, New Ross, Carrick-on-Suir. All these towns would have some impact on all these towns. So it's important that a regional retail strategy is completed in a not too distant future. Yes, and preferably before.
Sorry, could you see capacity floor space being a measure of that strategy on a regional basis?
Generally, what they will do is, now it's a while since I've looked at the other regionals, so the regional ones would have been done in the Midwest and so on, and they do tend to put a loose quantum on say the regional capitals and that. So, but again, you'll find that they're not very specific, because obviously as soon as they're done, you put a capacity on. When economic indicators change, such as unemployment or employment, people's disposable income, these all change. And if there's population changes, which is continuously, as soon as those change, the capacity goes up and down with those changes. So it's very difficult, and you'll find that the quantums of retails identified wouldn't be specific in terms of square meterage. They'd be very general. So they might say something like, major expansion in Waterford City to cater for, higher end retail. So maybe the sort of stuff that you might find in a Dundrum town centre. So, high-end clothes, Tommy Hilfiger brands, Gucci, all this kind of stuff. Whereas you wouldn't expect that, maybe that kind of level in Kilkenny. It'd be slightly lower down, but still high-end, but not as quite as expensive maybe. That's the kind of trend that you get in those regional strategies.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. Michael O'Brien, your hand is raised. Do you want to? Oh, he's gone, I think.
No,
Michael,
he's
do you?
still here.
He's unmuted now, John, I think.
Yeah, fire away, Michael. The floor is all
Okay.
yours.
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No, can I just quote a small bit from the current plan where it says, this is 6 years ago, that due to the volatility and uncertainty of the economic climate, the difficulty in reliably projecting economic trends into the future, and the need for periodic reviews of the strategy to take account of revised national and regional population figures and change in economic circumstances. Now, if ever we're in the middle of everything, that was 6 years ago. It's 10 times worse now, and things are changing dramatically, as we know. And I was very interested in what Dennis has just said about Waterford. If ever there was a mad hat decision by anyone in Ireland, it is to go ahead with the North Wharf development in Waterford with public monies, in a situation in which Waterford City itself badly suffers now from dereliction, from shops closed up, offices closed up. Now the proposal is to put more offices, more shops, more retail development right on our doorstep, when we already have in Ferrybank a white elephant, a massive white elephant. Somebody should shout stop. Soon shout stop before it gets too far. And as Dennis said, Waterford are ahead of us in their plans, and no doubt they're going to embellish those plans and make it an even bigger problem for everybody around. That's the. Now that I have the chance to get in, do you mind if I?
No, fire away.
I was listening to Fiona and what she said with interest, and it was very comprehensive. And I was looking for a small little bit of sustenance for the county, for a reference to the scheduled towns of Thomastown, Callan, Graignamanagh, and so on. And I couldn't find any. I mean, the IDA are not interested in any of the scheduled towns in Kilkenny. If any development is going to take place in Kilkenny in terms of job creation, it's going to happen in Kilkenny City and environments. I mean, how often or how many times have we had the IDA and Enterprise Ireland come to, with Fiona around the scheduled towns to see what's possible and what's there?
Fiona, would you like to just take that element of the question from Michael? What is, I suppose, to summarise or to reprise it, is what's in it for the scheduled towns around County Kilkenny?
Yes, Michael, I suppose what I was covering was the bigger picture there in terms of the economic development. But I suppose the work that we do with local enterprise office, and we work day in, day out with businesses and all businesses throughout the county, and mainly, I suppose, out in the scheduled towns and in every rural village throughout Kilkenny. So we provide supports to them on a daily basis, Michael, in terms of financial assistance, in terms of mentoring, in terms of trading online. So huge range of supports there in terms of developing those businesses. I mean, we would work particularly with those smaller businesses that are 1 to 2 up to 10 employees that are spread throughout the county on a daily basis in terms of supporting them financially to set up and to grow their business, develop their management capability. So a lot of work, actually, it may not come across in the presentation, but a huge amount of the work of the local enterprise office is a dealing on a one-to-one basis with all those businesses throughout the county, Michael, and trying to grow them and create jobs.
Okay, can I ask Dennis, I don't know if you wish to comment on the...
You know, I want to come back in there for
yeah.
Michael, just in his comments. So a couple of things there, just Michael. So it's not correct to say that Waterford are ahead of us in their plan making. In fact, they're, in terms of development, city and county development plan, they're slightly behind us. In fact, they're a good bit behind us. They're still at their pre-draft publication stage, so they've done the issues papers. And just in relation to the comments on the North Keys and the district centre, the white elephant, as you call it. So certainly, it's not a good position to be in to have a development such as the shopping centre there, which is mostly vacant, and that has been the result of a long-standing legal dispute between the developer and Dunnes Stores. However, notwithstanding that, there is provision in our own plan, local area plan, to allow that to not only take, you know, substantial retail, but to take substantial offices if that's the case. And so that's something that's in the pipeline there that can happen. And just in relation to the North Keys, so we would be working fairly closely with Waterford City, despite what people might think outside or in the national terms. And so they have master planned that area themselves through a strategic development zone. And in principle, we'd be behind that. So that involves the idea of the concentric city. And part of that will be a fairly significant expansion into County Kilkenny of development. And of course, while the North Keys is technically within the boundary of Waterford, it's actually in, you know, the north side beside Ferrybank and so on. So it's in that context that you need to look at those plans. And obviously, you know, Waterford City Council, City and County Council have to manage their side of the city in terms of dereliction and protecting their existing city centre. But it is part of the long-term planning strategy to develop a more concentric city. So more development on the Kilkenny side, and I think you'll see that in the forthcoming plans for Waterford City as a metropolitan area. So one of those things is that, you know, under the national planning framework, Waterford being one of the cities, it's grown between 50 and 60% up to 2040. You'll see, you know, a significant amount of that proportion going to Kilkenny side. So, for instance, just as a ballpark figure, if it's grown by 50%, that'll bring the population from 50,000, 55,000-ish up to about 80,000. So that's an increase of about 30,000, and be close, I'd say, close to 15,000 of that could be on the Kilkenny side or thereabouts. So you'll be bringing the population from currently in Kilkenny, which is about, on the Kilkenny side, is about 7,000. I'm throwing out these figures now without having checked them, so they're just as I remember them from census figures, and it should go to 15,000 plus, you know, in that time. So you're making a more concentric city. So it's not fair to comment without that kind of perspective to it.
Okay. Hopefully that was useful.
Sorry, Michael is still speaking there. Michael, you're on mute.
Michael O'Brien. Hello, Michael. Yeah, maybe we'll come back to Michael. Just there's a question in from Brian Hamilton, and it concerns the Brega Valley. And Dennis, this one is for you. And Brian asks that given, and I don't know this, I'm just reading it, as is, given that the Brega Valley has seen 3 previous master plans as the Western Environs Plan, one in the early 90s by the council planning staff, 2 by the architects O'Mahony Pike in the late 90s, and 3 by Edward Shaffrey in the early 20s. He's asking about how confident can we be concerning the implementation of this new plan, given what he describes as the haphazard development that we've seen up to now with none of the facilities promised. So I suppose that's about, you know, the implementation of the plan, but also his characterising previous developments.
Yeah, so just on the chronology, just to make the chronology correct there. So the Patrick Shaffrey's company was engaged back in the late 90s, I think, or maybe late 90s to look at the plan. That ship sailed, and of course it was before my time. So when I came on the scene in about 2000, we set about developing a new master plan with architects O'Mahony Pike. So the whole idea behind the master planning was that we've felt in the eastern environs, what happened was a lot of houses were built without the infrastructure being put in place, and you were left then with people living out in the suburbs of the city without proper facilities, even in terms of very basic stuff like roads, proper roads, services like footpaths, public lighting, and so on. So we were determined to learn from that and to produce a document that would deliver housing with infrastructure, or front load the infrastructure, or at least get the infrastructure in place at the same time. And so that led to the development of the plan in 2004 by architects O'Mahony Pike. So what happened there was that the plan actually was set up to deliver that. So it was broken into deliverable parcels, and each parcel was identified with a certain levels of infrastructure to be delivered. So the plan, so those parcels couldn't go ahead and let that piece of infrastructure happen. Now, shortly after that, in the early noughties, in 2007, 2008, there was a certain amount of infrastructure, basic infrastructure there, that allowed some development to happen on the Callan Road. Now, 2 things happened after that. The crash happened, and so funding dried up. So you did have a certain amount of infrastructure, and those houses you go out there on the right hand side of the Callan Road, they were in place. So what happened after that? Everything was mothballed during the recession. There was no funding, there was no housing development. But once the economy turned around, then through the LIHAF proposal, so Redeveloping Ireland, or as the government launched it, funding was secured to deliver the infrastructure. So what Fiona referred to there, that piece of infrastructure has been delivered at the moment, which will open up a lot of the remainder of the lands there. So if you look at the draft plan, you'll see some land zoned around that piece of infrastructure. That infrastructure will deliver the road, it'll deliver the footpath, cycleways, it'll deliver part of the Brega Park, which will be used as that's part of the infrastructure, not only as an amenity, but as a water SUDS development, so retention of water, the flood waters, helping them biodiversity and so on, as well as acting as a natural retainer for the flood waters. So how am I confident of that'll be developed? At this stage, I'm very confident. It has a certain momentum, so the infrastructure is there. As Fiona had outlined, there's currently a house building going on there, on the Callan Road. We have another application for 110 houses with Borough Penola. We've had pre-planning with one of the other major landowners there, Cairn Homes, for 210 houses. I've also had informal discussions with another local developer in relation to an additional 20 acres there that he's looking at. So I'd be confident, and I would say, you know, given what I would class as pent-up demand in the economy. So if you can see there, just recently it was announced that there was the highest level of mortgage approvals has happened in last December. and I've been told, unofficially I've been told that there's about 250 mortgage approvals in Kilkenny at the moment, Kilkenny City. So with those kind of figures at the moment, I'd be confident that certainly the plan will go ahead. It has a momentum there now with the infrastructure, and it'll make it attractive. And the important thing for the council is to ensure that if houses are built, that the amenities, such as the open spaces and the connectivity, such as how you get back into the city by walking and cycling, are delivered at the same time. So
okay, Brian, I don't know if that gives you any comfort, but Dennis feeling bullish, I suppose, about that there are houses in progress in the area and infrastructure has been installed. I don't know if you'd like to say anything, Brian.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering that one of the big problems with the Western environs or the Bragg Valley is that all the development in Kilkenny seems to be on the east side, and that was, you had Killen Hill, you had Lyrat Hotel, and recently there was a very large strategic housing development proposed there, which I think was turned down by the council. But so you this constant magnet drawing Kilkenny towards the motorway, and in that context, the investment certainly wasn't going to the west side of the city, and I just hope that can be corrected, because otherwise everything from the completion of the ring road, I think, depends on that as well.
So Dennis, is that accurate to say that
I agree with that element for Brian. In historically, if you would see that the development followed the infrastructure. So the east side of the city got the infrastructure first. So you had the ring road, you had services put in along the ring road, and naturally development followed that. So I think it's time we're in the process of rebalancing that, and you'll see over the coming years infrastructure being delivered on the western side. So as I said, the road is the start of that, the road and the physical infrastructure with that. But I forgot to mention actually, and just Fiona alluded to it as well, there's significant educational investment going on in there as well. So we have 2 secondary schools of about 500 pupils each, the Gael Scoilna and the ETB are investing out there to produce a campus of 1,000 students. And then you have a recently purchased site for a primary school by the Department of Education. So those investments are not minor in terms of driving on development out there.
Okay, Dennis. A question in from Gary Graham asking what type of retail is planned for the Abbey Quarter and what's the time frame for this to happen? It was mentioned during the presentation that it'd be mixed, there'd be houses, offices and retail. Well,
I suppose, Gary, there isn't a plan to say that we're going to put X down in the Abbey Quarter, but it has to have a certain amount of retail in there, I would think, because first of all, you'll have workers in there, you'll have residents in there, but the scale of that, is something that needs to be worked on a little bit. So, for instance, it's immediately adjacent to the existing retail core. So whatever goes in there mustn't, detract from that in the sense of denuding of its vitality or vibrancy. So you're not looking for something. We're not looking for a Brown Thomas, maybe, or how to put it. We're not going to put it. And just careful of the brands. We're not going to put another Dunnes Stores in there, or so of 2,000 square meters. That's not what it's about. It's about the Abbey Quarter is trying to be a seamless extension of the city centre. So it needs to be compatible. So we're not going to try and do something that would be detrimental to the retail experience of the core retail area. So this will be a gradual thing. So first of all, you had Fiona there outlined you have the Abbey Quarter building, the first building going in there, which is for 5,000 square meters. So that's targeted as it might be multiple offices, and then you have the library, which will be the next project following on, and hopefully soon we will get some residential in there. And I think then you might see someone looking at it and say, well, that might be an attractive location for some kind of retail. But it's not something, we're not being prescriptive about the type of retail. But you have our guidance there with the plan saying retail expansion you can't, you must be able to say, this isn't going to affect the retail core. It's not going to detract from the vibrancy of the city centre. It should try to add to it. So connectivity is it's all about connectivity for me. So how do you get around the city centre, to and from the Abbey Quarter? How do the workers get from the Abbey Quarter up to the High Street, to the pubs and restaurants around there? And of course, there'll be opportunities as workers and residents come into the place within the Abbey Quarter itself. But we're not being prescriptive. We have nowhere said it has to be a certain size, minimum size or maximum size. So there's
Gary, does that go somewhere towards clarifying matters for you? Yeah. Gary's on mute. Gary, you don't wish to respond? No, that's fine. Okay. I have to give apologies to Richard Walsh, who asked a question about 20 minutes ago, and I haven't got around to it yet, so apologies for that. He asked about, it was the road to Waterford Limerick, and he asks, at what stage are the plans for improving the Bellevue Waterford Limerick road through South Kilkenny, with improvement plans for the County Kilkenny continued through other counties involved? So I don't know. Nicholas, do you want to answer that? This is Nicholas Lowe from Kilkenny County Council also.
Yes, John, I can answer that. Transport Infrastructure Ireland is responsible for the project. It's actually the extension of the N24. They've recently set up a technical steering group comprising their consultants, the Roads Design Office down in Tremore House, Waterford County Council, Kilkenny County Council, and Tipperary County Council. So the first phase of this road is Waterford Care in Kilkenny, in Tipperary, sorry. So what they're looking at the moment is setting the objectives for the project, and then I'd say in the next year or so the route selection should be finished, and then they can go on to the next stage. But at the moment, what we have in the plan is just the study area. And I think you can see that just before page 234 of the plan, there is an area indicated which is just a study area at this stage. But yeah, so hopefully in the next year or two, we might have a route selection for that route.
Okay, Richard, so next year or two for route selection. I hope that answers your question. Have you any supplemental you'd like to ask, or?
Sorry, the improvements that are planned for the Piltown Road at the moment, will they be part of that then? The Piltown bypass?
Yeah, as I said, at this stage, I'm not sure exactly how the N24 and the Piltown bypass would coordinate. That route selection for the N24 is not finalized, so it might use part of that road, or it might be a separate route. So that hasn't been decided. The bypass for Piltown, or the improvement works there, is actually a shorter term project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Nicholas. Nicholas, planner with Kilkenny County Council as well. Was there someone else had their hand up to make a contribution? There's another question coming in, which said from Marion Ackerman, there are no civic realm enhancements in the draft for John Street, despite the street really needing the same treatment as the other shopping streets in the city centre. Why is this being left out? Who'd like to take that? Dennis?
Yeah, sure. I'll have a go at that. Yeah, you're good with the questions tonight, Marion. So, so I wouldn't class it. John Street isn't a question of being left out. It has very particular problems. So it is one of the main arteries still into the city for car-borne transport. So while there is improvements being looked at and have been developed for, as I mentioned in the thing, so we've improvements for High Street, and we have improvements for Rosend Street, mainly COVID driven. So the idea of having the one-way system around, that was part of COVID, and it did bring pedestrian and connectivity improvement. But there is a problem with John Street. I will recognise that it has, poor connectivity pedestrian-wise. The footpaths are narrow. It has no dedicated cycle lanes or So it does need something in that form. I wouldn't say they're being ignored. There is work going on in the background the whole time around that process, and part of it will be, will evolve, I think, through the council's transport plan, which we have to do as part of the development plan, and that's currently in preparation. Now, we've been able to take some of the principles around that and bring them forward, but that whole, I'd call it a conundrum. How do you deal with the traffic in and out of along John Street will be something that'll try to be addressed in that, because if you, first of all, trying to make public transport a priority, how do you make it a priority in John Street? Do you make it one way? Do you make it, or what do you do? So, but you still have to get the traffic into your central car parks, the likes of the Duns Stores car park, and people need to be get out, in and out.
Janice, Marion has submitted a supplemental, which she said she meant specifically footpaths and visual attractiveness rather than those kind of ones.
Yeah, so I take your point, and I just go back to the point that we need to first be able to decide what level of traffic goes down John Street, so we can take back some of the space for pedestrians, and how we try to achieve that. It is going to be difficult, and I suppose we don't have a firm commitment there at the moment. But in terms of the concept of your 10-minute city and the concept of trying to deal with the problems of public transport should open up opportunities to make that public realm better. So I don't have anything more specific in that at the moment, Marion, but like, watch this space, I suppose. That's one thing you can say. There will be something. I know Ian Gardner, as the town engineer, is working on those proposals as we speak, and it's not just John Street, it's citywide.
Yeah, sorry. I suppose, to be clear, Dennis, I'm wondering why the footpaths in their current they're narrow, and I don't think they need to be widened, or that the traffic street needs to be narrowed, but they're actually very uneven. They're in bad repair, and when you walk through the city, there's a standard that the other streets have enjoyed, and I know Ormond Street is getting the same treatment. Patrick Street looks absolutely beautiful,
yes,
and that's a two-way street. John Street, just, it feels like it's been left behind. There's staining on the streets that I called in about 3 years ago, and nothing was ever done with it. It was a grease spill, and it was green, and it was scummy, and it sat there for years. It just feels that John Street is the poor relation.
Yeah. Okay, I take what you're saying there, but it's for development plan. To me, that strikes me as partly operational. So, if there's street cleaning and footpath cleaning and upgrades, general upgrades of footpaths, that's not something that you might see particularly in a development plan at this level. But I take your point that there is. You mentioned the Patrick Street and you mentioned High Street and so on, and Parliament Street, and I suppose there was a particular strategy around those. So from High Street down to Parliament Street, Medieval Mile, and all that kind of stuff, that was part of the investment. And maybe there's a case then to be made. Well, we need to make those connections now. If McDonagh Junction is,
should be a radius. I think the focus should be north, south, east, west, and let visitors, ramble, not just in a linear mile up and down.
Yeah.
There's very little vacancy on the street now, and an awful lot of rates going in on that axis, and I just think it needs to. It's not in the plan, and I think
it's a fair point, and I suppose it's something that we can look at when we come to finalise, that we can see if we can put something in there to bolster up that and give it an objective. We can have a look at it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Marion. Point well made. We're going to start wrapping it up pretty shortly. So if anyone else wants to get a question in, there's a question wrapped with an observation from Councillor John Coonan, and it's about education. And he said, excuse me now, I have to scroll backward. I lost it. It was in relation to schools in the eastern area. And he says there seems to be an imbalance in the provision of schools in the city. Current plans show building and expansion in western environs. Is there an opportunity to review providing more pre and post primary schools in the eastern section of the city? I don't know who'd like to take that. Is that for you, Dennis?
I suppose, there's a couple of things there. So obviously the planned facilities on the western side of the city are for planned expanded neighbourhoods. So in general, so the western environs there, the Brega Valley, as well as 3,000 houses. We need, secondary school of 1,000, which we're providing through 2 schools, and then a primary school to feed that. So in the other investments, then what you had is, historically Loreto has been there since whatever 18 or 19, whatever it is. CBS has been in James Street for so long. Kieran's have been where it is since 17, whatever. It's not something that they're easy move. But in terms of the CBS, they were suffering from a very tight site there with the potential of fire hazard and so on. So they were, it was important from their perspective to get a site, and they did that through their own due diligence and used their own initiative, and they picked a site. So we've been working around that to fit that into the Loch McCask neighbourhood plan. In terms of the eastern side, so when that was expanded back in the 80s, I made to refer to earlier. So again, the facilities were looked at there in terms of education. So the expansion of the primary schools were there, so they have been expanded over the years. And again, the junior school and the senior school in Michael Street and in Ballybrook Street, they've served that catchment over there. And there was never a secondary school, a new secondary school need identified for that side or for the city until we started in 2004 to serve the new neighbourhood. So we're dealing with a historical context there. It's not that easy, to when you've already expanded the area, and we don't see any major expansion again in population for the foreseeable future on the eastern side. There really isn't, a demand for a school site over there, particularly when I think schools would be, they have their own boards of management and so on, and it's important to them to be serving their identified historical catchments. So that'll be my answer to that.
Okay, Dennis, thank you. Councillor Coonan, I don't know if you wish to say anything in response.
John, yes, thanks, Chairman. It's just to say that even from a primary perspective, primary educational perspective, it seems that with the extension on that side of the city, that you seem to have the same schools that Dennis referred to. Look at it, it's just an observation. Okay. You have Michael Street and you have Ballybrook Street, and I mean they're covered in practically. There's no space for expansion or for even bicycle parking in Michael Street. So it seems that there would be a pressing need for the extension of the development of that area in education at that side of the city. It seems a deficit. Look at here, I take on board everything Dennis is saying, and I welcome the extension development of schools on the western side. I live on that side myself, but it's just an observation. I take exactly what he's saying, but it still seems to be a deficit on that side, because there has been a rather increase, a fair increase in population on the eastern side of the city over the last 15 years. With the same schools providing the service that are, I suppose, closed in, you could say now. Okay.
Colin Ahern, I saw you, Colin Ahern, President of Kilkenny Chamber of Commerce, had your hand raised. If you'd like to, the floor is yours if you'd like to.
Thanks, John. No, it wouldn't let me write in a message for some reason. I'm not too sure if I'm logged in correctly. But okay. No, look, thanks. Great conversation. I just want to ask Dennis briefly about the Abbey Quarter and parking in particular. Is any of the parking there planned for public parking or predominantly for employees and residents of the Abbey Quarter? And if so, should the plan not be to maximise the current city centre parking before that would happen?
Okay, so 2 questions there. First of all, so deal with the Abbey Quarter itself. So the parking proposal there at the moment is not a permanent use. So the way the master plan was set up, and indeed the urban design guidance was set up, was to allow for temporary uses as the development is rolled out. So you've got about a 10-acre site in the middle of the town, and you can see, I think I said the last day, the whole process started there in 2012, actually, is when the announcement was first made that the brewery were going to vacate and sell the site. So it actually took then, between all the research and due diligence going on, it actually took us till 2015 to actually get the master plan in place. And on top of that, then we went off and we did an urban design strategy. We dealt with the blocks and how they might develop. So the whole strategy around the master plan itself is not to have, significant amounts of car parking apart from, disabled uses or circulation and deliveries and so on. Now, so the proposal that came forward then through the development company there, the Abbey Quarter, can't know the exact name, but the Abbey Quarter Development Company, is for a meanwhile use within their one of the blocks that they own there adjacent to. So, and you can see in that it's to cater for some buses parking as well, and that's a long-standing objective to get buses down to that end of town. And then there's 122 spaces, I think. So I would say those spaces that there was no, in the permission that was granted, there wasn't any stipulation that it should be public or private, but I would imagine that certainly some of that would go for construction workers, and some of it may on a temporary basis operate for the occupants of the building, but it's certainly nowhere near anything satisfying the demand. So the other thing to focus on then is the concept of the pedestrian connectivity. So it's not in our in our plans, if you like, to expand car parking within the city centre at present, and that will be kind of refined further when we get to the finish of our Kilkenny local transport plan, which we're currently in the middle of. And by the time we get the plan adopted, hopefully we'll have a good sense of where that's going. So that's definitely going to concentrate on more cycling, more pedestrians, more buses as well within the city. So the idea of larger car parking or more car parking down in the Abbey Quarter isn't something that is in the long-term prospects at the moment. So I don't know if that answers the question, but so the temporary use down there will be 5-6 years, that kind of time, which is in the lifetime of a city is completely minor, I suppose.
Okay, I hope that was helpful. Question in, and we're going to start drawing it to a close now, but COVID has, of course, changed working practices almost beyond recognition. And this question's in from Councillor Maria Dollard, who says we have a very low number of remote working hubs in Kilkenny and hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs available. Is it something that Kilkenny County Council would provide, particularly in relation to the county towns? And Gary Graham just added to that, and he asked about what's the plan for rural broadband to be rolled out. I don't know who's appropriate. I think Fiona, maybe would that be?
Yeah. Do you want to take, or I can have a go as well, Fiona? I have some knowledge, but I know we were in discussions about this.
So it's just in relation to the remote working hubs, Maria. How are you? And I know we've discussed this. We're currently doing a feasibility study just to look at, it's actually a southeast study, just to try and get some feedback in terms of the numbers of people that are interested in remote working. I know we're currently working on where we have funding available for, again, a hub in the city, but we're also looking at spaces throughout the county that where demand will need to be met in terms of remote working. We're at a very early stage of this and how it's going to impact post-COVID, but we're certainly going to be looking at that space, Maria, and looking at areas in the rural towns around to see what the larger businesses would use these facilities for employees that are based in Kilkenny to work out of. So it's certainly something that we're going to be looking at from a local enterprise office perspective, Maria.
Yeah, and can I just add to that, John, as well?
Yeah.
Just so there is plenty of so the plan would support that objective of remote working, And, you know, there is, I know of, say on the Dublin Road there in the city, there's already a remote working hub there that works quite well. I see people going in and out there just at the entrance to the railway station. So the opportunity is, so if there's a business opportunity there, the plan is well facilitated to or is well provided for to facilitate that type of you know, entrepreneurial proposal. And just in relation to the broadband, yeah, again, the plan is supportive of broadband and strong on the delivery of that, and it supports the rollout of the national broadband plan. So these are hard to say sometimes, tongue twisters, but certainly, you know, we'd be fully supportive of that rollout for the rural areas. And already been in discussion with someone in around Kilmacow who was looking at that opportunity for themselves, and obviously is looking to piggyback on the research that Fiona is doing in relation to that remote working piece. So that kind of work is going on in the background the whole time. Yep.
So Nicola just says, please look at Callan for one of those hubs. Thank you. So
can I just pop in for a second, just to respond to that? Thanks very much, Fiona. I know Fiona came to a webinar conference with me to look at the possibilities of the remote working and the opportunities that are there. I think that if we're really serious about attracting really good, you know, well-paid quality jobs to Kilkenny, we really need to be looking at really top-class remote co-working hubs, because I know of two people that were home at Christmas who were from Kilkenny. They both have companies abroad, and they were looking for, you know, suitable remote working hubs, and they're not going to take a sort of a hot desk in an office. They're looking for something really top notch. And, you know, we have everything else. We have the facilities, we have, you know, it's a great place to live. If I didn't live here myself, I'd be moving, you know, so we really need to attract those jobs, because we've lost a lot from some of the big companies. I know my son works in State Street, and a lot of his colleagues have returned to where they come from to do their work. So that spend is lost from the town. You know, those people that were there every day buying coffees and sandwiches and, you know, keeping a lot of small businesses going, they're lost to the town. So we need to replace that and attract more if we can. So, you know, I'm just wondering, is the Abbey Quarter, the brew house, is there a possibility that the council could use some of that space, because the council is obviously half owners of that company? So it might be something to think about. I'll stick it in my submission.
Maria, we actually have secured funding for development of a remote hub there in the Abbey Business Centre. So it'll be a 10-pod working hub. We currently have a business in there that are waiting to relocate, hopefully to the Abbey Quarter. So as soon as the Abbey Quarter development moves on, that company moves on, we have the funding in place ready to commence a 10-pod hub, which will be very high end. And I'm of the same vision as yourself. It has to be high end for the modern worker. So that's certainly the start of it. And we're ready we secured funding through Enterprise Ireland and through Kilkenny Partnership for that model. So we're working on the strategy for that.
Thanks,
That's
Fiona.
great. Thanks, Fiona.
Linda Healy, I beg your pardon, you've had your hand raised for some time, but if you'd like to come in, and I think
thanks, John. Sorry, equally I wasn't able to type in the chat, so I possibly logged in wrong as well. It was just going back there to I think when Mariam was speaking about the John Street, and I just had a question. Tactical urbanism, is that a budget under placemaking, or is there any? Does that even form part of the development plan?
Sorry, Linda, what was that? You said tactical urbanism, was it?
Tactical urbanism. Does that come under the placemaking budget, or does it form a part at all of the development plan?
So can you elaborate a bit on tactical urbanism?
So you have done like some simple tactical urbanism, such as, well, I don't know if it was the tables and chairs and that type of thing, the outdoor eateries down in the market yard, I think you said earlier on, Dennis.
Yes. Yeah.
So like the tactical urbanism, it can be quite unique, or it can be simple, such as, additional seating areas, etc. It's just like
So
if there was an inventory of it. Look, first thing I suppose the question is, does it come under placemaking and the placemaking budget?
It would come under placemaking. So at the strategic level, as I said, we have set out a strategy for placemaking, and that those things would fall in under that. So at that, say, Kilkenny City level, what you have then is the different projects that are evolve out of that, such as the seating, as you mentioned, down in the market yard, the Mayor's Walk, and so on. So that type of it's not a phrase I come across before with tactical urbanism. I get what you mean. Certainly that is that's part of our projects or our vision of, you know, what placemaking is all about, to make it tactile. The improvement
is temporary, like, so it's a, you know, it's a kind of a temporary innovation, and it can bring a certain amount of attractiveness. But I always, like, since I've seen it coming in more and more, particularly since COVID-19, if there was an inventory of it, that when it was changed in the city centre, that, you know, those that inventory might be more available to rural villages and towns, as you know, because it's cheap. It's a cheap kind of measure for change.
Yeah. So yeah, again, I take your point there, very well made. And I suppose where the villages and towns come in, the council is good at making use of schemes such as the town and village renewal and so on. And over some of the examples there I'd shown about in Callan and so on, where we had improved the Mott Field and made you know, seating arrangements and so on. So certainly the towns such as Callan, Thomastown are not being neglected in that respect. And the same would apply then to Kilkenny. The sources to fund these things. We're good at a council at sourcing funding through the various schemes that are rolled out by the government. And a lot of these schemes, you have to get the funding. You have to show how, you know, the project contributes to your placemaking, contributes to a plan-led approach. So yeah, no, I take your point, but to say, yeah, that sort of stuff is part of our ongoing work there with these various schemes that come through.
Okay, Dennis, thank you. And thanks to Linda. I think that brings us to a close. Just a quick look on Google, and I came up with another one, which is allied to tactical urbanism, which is urban acupuncture. So you learn something new every day. I hadn't heard of tactical urbanism or urban acupuncture either. So it's my new learning for the day. Folks, that's about all we've got time for. We've had a good 2 hours. I have to say the time has flown. Thanks to everybody for their contributions, to those who asked questions. At some stage, we were in the high 40s of attendance and good engagement. So thanks very much. I'm going to hand over to Dennis now, who's going to wrap up this evening's proceedings.
Thanks, John. And I'll just throw up there on the screen if everyone can see that. So it's just, first of all, just to thank everyone for participating tonight. Your comments and suggestions and questions were welcome, and I hope you got some adequate responses out of it. And just to reassure you that what John said at the beginning, all this is recorded, so we'll be going back over and picking through the points that are made. And just to remind everyone that this is our second of 4 events. So the next one is on Thursday, the 4th of February at the same time, 7 o'clock. And it'll deal with climate change and action, renewable energy and transport. And on Monday next, we have the natural and built heritage placemaking. So I'm sure we'll have a little bit more about tactile placemaking at that one and other issues. So again, just to thank John for being his usual excellent self in terms of chairing the session. Thank my own team, Katrina, Nicholas and Naomi, for all the work in the back of the presentation, and in particular to thank Fiona for an excellent presentation on Leo and how, you know, her work is dovetailed into the formal development plan process. So thanks very much, everybody, and we'll see you on Thursday, hopefully. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to everybody.
Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, John.
Call now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. That was great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.